Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a systematic episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of The Gold Standard. What number is this, Blake?
I don't know.
What do you even do?
I don't know. I push buttons. That's all I do.
You know, I say that for people. I'm joking. That's a joke. Me and Blake like to have a little fun. I don't actually yell at Blake.
He does.
No, Jesus. So anyway, you can follow us on social media, which is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @Alan M. Mosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com.
That's right.
Also, consider supporting the show if you like what we're doing and you want to help us spread the message. And that is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. And as we like to do at the start of all of our programs, we're going to show a few of our friends off. We're going to start off with the other 3%, which I was talking to Pat over at the other 3%, and they're having some Zuck problems.
Uh-oh.
So, guys, go support our friends at the other 3%. They have the meme today. I bet he's thinking about other women. Well, what is he actually thinking about, Blake? How can we get guns to Hong Kong? That's a good question.
It's classic.
So, we're going to also move on to our friends over at the Status Quo. You can find the Status Quo right here. Look at that. Gordon Clark, the Church, and Libertarianism with Mike Lewis. So they're already up to number 39.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. Look at that. And they even have a little meme right there. It's Libertarian Jesus. I told you to feed the poor, not create laws that steal from people to do it. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
There you go. That's so sacrilegious of me to be the one saying that, but here we are. I also want to bring up, last week we talked about Liberty Memes kind of had their Patreon money bomb where they were trying to get more Patreon subscribers. And the guys over at Liberty Memes, we've had Dadman, David Gay on the program before, and they've had their problems with the Zuck as well. But they raise money. They do a lot of stuff with that money, folks. I want you to understand, they're not, they don't raise that money from their community over at Liberty Memes and then just go party. Like we would do. Me and Blake would do that.
No, I wouldn't do
that. No, but, you just go buy more goats. That's what you would do. No, they actually take that money and they donate it to people within our community that maybe are having a little bit of hard time, maybe some sort of tragedy has befallen them. And I don't want to show the guy's name because I didn't get permission to do that. But there was a guy who had run into a hard time and was having some financial problems. And Liberty Memes, he actually has a little thing here. He says, hey, everybody. Stepping out of my comfort zone here to say thank you to everybody who donated, bumped, and shared my fundraiser this past Sunday. It was a fundraiser that Liberty Memes helped support. In 18 days, he had raised just $110, and then the Liberty Memes community came through. They raised over $1,300 in one day.
Nice.
Voluntary donations showing that voluntarism can work.
Yeah, I like that little guy dancing there.
Yeah, I know. That's his thing. Well, says that's his thank you dance.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't think that's not the thing I want people to come away with from this, is that you get a cool dancing GIF. That's not. And it's GIF, by the way. That's GIF. It's done. It's GIF. But anyway, it's putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And it's, we talk the talk, but we got to walk the walk as well. And they do that. And so I just wanted to show that as an example of that is a real life story of a real life person that benefited from the support of people just like you.
Yeah.
So there you go. So our friends at Liberty Memes, thank you. We have a really great show for you in store today. We have a guest who has been on the program, I think at least a couple of times before. I think Suzanne's making her third appearance on the show. We're going to get to her right after the break. But before we do that, I wanted to show a couple of things to kind of warm us up to get ready, for Suzanne. I was on the Wasatch Report this past Monday. And one of the things we had actually talked about was this boneheaded psychiatrist who went on CNN. And he actually said, quote, Trump may be responsible for many more million deaths than Hitler, Stalin, and Mao.
Wow.
Now, we know that to just, look, I don't like Trump. I really don't even like talking about the man. I don't care for him in any way. But that statement is just objectively false. And something that Suzanne and I were kind of bumping back around was, so how do you deal with having mainstream media who can just make objectively false statements and promote just purely propaganda, and how poisonous it is, and that there's no really recourse. And that sort of reminds us of the state too, that there's so many things that the state has control over, that they can do things that we know are just objectively, factually harmful, if not outright illegal or unconstitutional if you're into my Constitution. But the fact of the matter is that if they have a monopoly on that aspect of society, that service, whatever, then you really have no recourse. You're kind of at the mercy of the system, hoping that the system works, so to speak. But as we'll discuss today, oftentimes the system doesn't work, or if it does work, it takes a long time, it costs you a lot of money, and then you're sort of left without recourse to that. So we're going to get to that with Suzanne Sherman right after this break. Hey, did you see the playoff games last weekend?
Oh, you're into the sports ball game.
Sports Ball with Mike Meharry and Alan Mosley. SportsBallPodcast.com.
Sports ball is not a libertarian sports show. It's a sports show done by a couple of libertarians.
For when you need your bread and circuses. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com. So it's time for us to unmute Suzanne. Okay, Suzanne, you're actually on air now. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you got all that out of your system before.
Just doing a little sign language.
Yeah, I know. So, guys, our guest today is Suzanne Sherman, who is the host of the Wasatch Report with Suzanne Sherman over on the Cerberus Radio Network. You know what? There's a lot of great folks over the Cerberus Radio Network. Jeff is awesome. Greg is awesome. But Justin Spears, who has the newest program over on Cerberus, is also awesome. So it's really a whole combination of awesome folks. And coming soon, you're actually going to have the Gold Standard on. So now their network's gone to crap because they brought on the Gold Standard. So anyway, Suzanne Sherman, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here. I think one of the things I love about you is you just don't take yourself seriously. But I will say, in all seriousness, your talent is very, sadly, underrated. I think you're one of the most talented podcasters out there. And on behalf of all of us at Cerberus Radio Network, we wholeheartedly welcome you and are delighted that you've chosen to participate with us.
Well, I'm really happy to be a part of the network. I mean, now I'm actually involved with a group of people that have standards. See, we've never had standards before on this program, so I'm a little bit scared as to how it's going to work out. But anyway, here we are. So Suzanne, we discussed before the show, I wanted to have you on today, and the topic that we have isn't necessarily a current event topic per se, but it's more that, so fans of yours will know, and people in the show as well, that so you were a practicing attorney in the state of California before you moved to the great rolling hills and plains and mountains of Utah where you live today. And I think a lot of people are naturally going to say, well, that's quite a big jump, right? Like that's quite a change of scenery. That's quite a change of lifestyle. So I want you to kind of take us through the beginning journey of Suzanne Sherman, the hotshot lawyer who's taking the town by storm, and sort of what happened next.
Well, I was born and raised in California, and I lived there until 2013. And in 1996, I passed the California bar exam. I went to an unaccredited night law school. I never claimed to have a big, Ivy League pedigree, but it was for people like us that were working full time and just wanted to get a law degree. And I decided to work and practice criminal defense. And there was a well-known large firm in the area that was known for taking new admittees from the smaller schools. One of the partners had gone to a smaller school as well, and they liked to give us a chance. And I was very grateful for that opportunity. But one thing I did notice, and again, I'm not saying that firms like this don't serve their clients well as a rule, but what I did notice was firms that are top heavy with many partners, one major associate, and then one newbie like me to do all the running around. My experience was I was not able to really serve my clients. There are some outstanding solo practitioners out there. And I do want to warn people that if you're looking for an attorney when you are in trouble, this is something you and I were talking about the other day. If you wait till you really need one, it's not a good time to make the best decision on your behalf. So familiarize yourself with those that are in your community that you might need to call upon. It's a myth that you have to have one on retainer. With the competition being so fierce, trust me, they will take your money.
Well, I don't doubt that. Well, but before we get to some of your personal stories and then kind of more of the philosophical things at the end, touch on that you just said right there. So there's a lot of competition in the world of legal representation. So how does that affect the market, and how does that affect potential clients?
Well, the funny thing is, it's hard to sort out who the good ones are. Just a quick story: when I was an undergrad at UCLA, I was in a restaurant, and our server was an entertainment lawyer. So, if you're aspiring to be an entertainment lawyer, don't go to Hollywood. It's not going to be the place for you to go. And I think with a glut of attorneys out there, again, it's difficult to sort out who's good, who's bad. Don't be impressed simply because somebody spends a lot of money on advertisements. Get to know the community, even if you start with the local bar association. Meet with somebody ahead of time and assess based on your lifestyle. Any one of us can be become part of the criminal justice system at any given time. I shared a story with you before we got on the air, and I'll discuss it in a little while.
So, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. I know one of the stories that you have actually pertains to a professor that you had.
Yes. Well, the school I went to, it was unaccredited. Like I said, you can take the bar exam in California. You don't have to be a member of an ABA or state accredited school. And our school was staffed by practicing superior court judges, municipal court judges, commissioners, and DAs, defense attorneys. It was a really unique experience. And I was telling you about, I don't know if people remember her, but her name was Ellie Nessler. And her son was molested, to put it mildly, by a gentleman by the name of Dan Driver. And Dan Driver had been arrested previously in Palo Alto. He had been in the San Jose area, and he was accused of molesting multiple young boys, having sex with multiple young boys. The judge in that case gave him probation because members of his church vouched for his character. That judge was one of my teachers in the law school. I'm not going to mention his name, but I remember seeing the court documents on the news when I lived out there. I thought, my goodness, that was my con law, I think property, and I forgot what else he taught. But there was a commonality. And what happened was she ended up shooting the man, Dan Driver, and killing him. And this man, who had sexually molested and raped multiple little boys, didn't really spend time in jail. He got probation for that, and she ended up serving a life sentence because she died of cancer in custody and didn't get to raise her son.
Now let me ask you a couple of questions about that. So for people at home that are saying, well, but how could that be? So let's say one of my friends or relatives was the victim of some sort of heinous act as that, and it's going to court, and the accused has a history of this type of activity. How can probation be the outcome?
You and I talk about the proper role of government and what should be a crime, what should not be considered a crime. When do you provide restitution? When should some people actually be locked up?
Sure.
And I submit to you, if you're going to put this guy on probation for a sex offense, he's either good enough to be released or he's not. Yeah. And sure enough, he did the same thing. So this is one of those instances where I don't have a problem seeing somebody put in a cage. That's what the system is for. There are some people that simply should not be out in society. And how do you provide restitution for something like that and protect kids at the same time? It's a really tough, unfortunate situation.
So, in like, because you obviously know a lot more about this than I do. So, in the process of that case being brought to court, I mean, what do you see as the role of the prosecution, the role of the judge, in that you can, I mean, because I always, I'm going by this Hollywood sort of view of, well, there's going to be this hard prosecutor who wants the maximum for everybody because he wants to have a great record. So again, it just seems like, well, how did the system fail here that someone who is accused of such horrible acts and has a history of them can wind up with probation? I guess what I'm saying is it's hard for me to understand how it got to that point to where the Ellie felt like the need to take justice into her own hands. And to be clear, I'm for the sake of not getting zucked/deplatformed, I'm not telling people that you should be taking justice into your own hands. But what I do say is I understand people in their desperation when they can look at the facts of the case and then they can see the system at work and they see it come to this conclusion and they think, what am I supposed to do? Like, this can't be it. And then I guess the pointed question I'm asking you is that what is done with prosecutors who don't do their job? What is done with judges who come to rulings that are just objectively terrible?
Well, this prosecutor, I believe, they were trying to get him sentenced. And at the sentencing hearing, and they do have sentencing hearings, I've been for these for also sex offenders, the DA, probation, the judge, and the defense counsel all get together and try and come up with a solution and recommendations. Ultimately, the discretion lies with the judge. And in this case, I believe that the judge made a very bad decision, and this gentleman was able to go out and do the same thing again. And clearly, none of us are advocating taking it into your own hands. Ellie Nestler was no saint. She had a rather colorful background herself.
Sure.
But as a mother of two boys, I can't say I don't understand her frustration with the system. Here we are putting people in the cage that he should have been in for smoking or selling plants. And this guy gets to walk because his friend said he's a good guy. Good guys don't rape little boys.
Yeah. Now, you had also told me a story that I want you to share on the show of someone that you represented, I believe, that ended up over what ended up being a nothing burger, but this nothing burger cost him tens of thousands of dollars and 3+ years of his life.
Yeah, that was actually a case out here in Utah, and I'm not practicing law anymore. My status is inactive, and I never tried to practice law in Utah. But this was a friend of mine that was guiding an elk hunt. We have an antlerless elk hunt in the winter time in Utah. It's a depredation hunt. And regardless of what kind of hunt it is, we still have to hunt ethically and treat the animals humanely. Well, in the wintertime, we hunt on snowmobiles out here, and they were on a road. You can't harass the animals. You can't wear them out or torment them. But as they're traveling to catch up with this herd, one elk got bogged down in the snow. Snowmobiles do not have brakes. And they tried to avoid her. They couldn't. And so what they did was humanely euthanized her. And one of the hunters just said, use my tag and we will put her down and I will, my hunt's over at this point. Somebody else along with the hunt did not approve of how it was handled. So my friend was charged with a felony of wanton destruction of wildlife. And then there was an accompanying misdemeanor for a wrongful taking. Well, without this felony that went with it, the misdemeanor by necessity had to fall. And I told him, the way he described it, the investigator was somebody from the Department of Conservation who had moved over to Department of Natural Resources, and he was predisposed to be biased against hunters in the first place. In fact, they've actually quoted him saying as much. He shouldn't have even been involved in the case. Sure. He never went out to investigate. So anyway, I told my friend, hold tight, but he still had to retain an attorney. Hold tight at the preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a mini trial or a hearing where they determine if there's enough evidence to hold the defendant or the accused over for a felony. And I said, this will be dropped. When it's dropped, the misdemeanor is going to have to go too. Well, as I expected, the misdemeanor or the felony was dropped, but they didn't let go of the misdemeanor. They kept charging him with that, even though it was baseless without the accompanying felony. So then they said, well, so-and-so's not really willing to come testify. Why don't you just plea it out? And I said, hold tight, don't do it. After 2.5 years, they finally dropped the misdemeanor, Cost this guy almost $10,000. They knew the charge was baseless, but they decided to go through it anyway. And once they just dismiss everything because they didn't have enough evidence, he doesn't get his money back. His attorney earned the money, but they cost him this money. So here we have negligent, egregious behavior, depending on how you want to look at it, that costs him money. If you or I did that cost somebody that much time and money, we'd be expected to compensate the harmed individual for it.
So, okay, so let's break this one down just a little bit. So again, one of our biggest complaints about government in general, and definitely on this show, because everyone watches the Gold Center knows I'm an anarchist. What my biggest issue is that when the state has a monopoly on certain aspects of society, certain goods, certain services, then you feel like you really, if the quote unquote system doesn't work as intended, or of course, as I would argue, it probably did work as intended, just doesn't work for you. You feel like you have no recourse. There's nothing you can do. So in the case that you just provided, okay, so the case is over. 2.5, 3 years has gone by. You're out $10,000. Is there anything he can do?
No, I think he said that he could file for a constitutional violation in a different court, and for whatever reason he couldn't do it on this one. I don't remember exactly why. But again, that's going to cost more time, more money, and then you're relying ultimately on the government to investigate itself and ultimately find that they did something wrong. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So case in point here is that if you find the hypothetical you at home, if you find yourself in these shoes, and something that I really wanted to touch on is, that everyone else involved in the court, the stenographer, the judges, the attorneys, anyone in the gallery, they all go home and sleep at night. But the person who is in the middle of this case, that wasn't just 2.5 years of filing paperwork, was it? It was 2.5 years of mental anguish, of anxiety and stress and depression and wondering what could happen to him and wondering when is this all going to be over? How much is this going to cost me? It affects every aspect of your life. And those are things that it's hard to put a figure on of, well, if this person was going to be given restitution for it, there should be a figure for what it cost him other than just the literal dollars and cents, because it was painful to go through that experience. But in his case, there's really no recourse for that whatsoever. And as you had put, if this were any other facet of society, if this were anything in the private sector, this would not just be a walk-away situation. I mean, there'd be lawsuits at the wazoo, right?
Clearly. And this individual also had a medical issue. Can I say it was caused by it? But he had, I think it was a blood clot, and he almost died. He was in intensive care for almost a week, and he's still on medications to monitor his blood. And again, was it caused by that? We can't say so, but the stress certainly can contribute to something like that. But in California, we also had this pressure, just like he got, to just plea to these claims. Just plea to a misdemeanor. It's okay. Yeah. And I had a case, especially in domestic violence, and this is the problem when you're pressured to plea to misdemeanor domestic violence, you lose your gun privileges forever under the Lautenberg Act. I think that came about in 1996, and I was under tremendous pressure to plead these guys out. We had so many cases, and in one instance, this was right during the O.J. Simpson trial. My client and his wife had a very contentious relationship, and the judge actually, when we were in chambers for a conference, tried to get the DA and me as private counsel to leave so he could talk to my client without me. I said, absolutely not. The DA walked out. He didn't work for me. I didn't care what he did. But eventually, what he did try to do was convince my client, because of the climate with the Simpson trial, to plead, because the potential jury pool was going to probably be biased against him. So forget the fact that the judge and the attorneys had an obligation to pick an unbiased jury. He tried to cow him into taking a plea. And I said, absolutely not. Here's a better arrangement. How about if we get a solution that actually works? These two are both the problem. Clearly, we can't make this part of the court document and enforceable against her. But how about if we do a plea to disturbing the peace and they both go to counseling together and try and solve this problem? And eventually that's what the plea was for. Was it enforceable against the woman? No, but they went and we never heard from them again.
Yeah. There was one thing I wanted you to touch on that you had mentioned to me before the show, where you were talking about being involved with a firm that would take cases knowing that motions would be filed and clients not being able to afford it. I want you to touch on that a little bit.
This is the problem when you have to take so many cases to pay for the partners' very large homes and expensive cars.
Sure.
And you have one little minion like me running around court, like a chicken without a head, trying to handle all these cases. And I was given at lunch a file and said, you're going to argue what they call 1538-5. It's a motion to suppress evidence that is taken in contravention to your constitutional rights. Yes, I was part of the problem. We had to argue Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, but that's an aside. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to stay here at lunch and review this. Nope, you need to come with us to lunch because we have to talk about other cases. So 15 minutes before I go into court, I sit down. I'm in the courtroom and I'm reviewing the motion to suppress. Now, what they call they call memorandum of points and authorities. You have to have a statement of the facts of the case, the individual you are representing. You have to state those, then cite the laws that were violated, and show what the proper redress should be, and support it with case law. I'm reading this facts. And I'm panicking now. There is nothing even remotely connected to my client here. So I said, okay, right now, tell me what happened. And he told me I didn't have the facts read. I made a major blunder because I didn't have the timeline correct, and we lost. It was a kamikaze run. Even the DA said, I'm really sorry how that went down. Well, it was awful for me, but it was worse for my client.
Yeah.
I called the managing partner who gave me this piece of garbage to go into court with. I said, hey, Richard, what is this? There's nothing remotely connected to my client here. What is this? Oh, well, sometimes we just have boilerplate motions that if we know a client can't take these cases, or if we know a client can't afford an extra motion, we just give one of these. Well, that would have been nice to know ahead of time. First of all, it's unethical to take a client on if you don't want to pursue, their defense diligently. And so he said it would rather than just say, you have a motion to suppress evidence here, that's going to cost you an extra $1,500, or we suggest you go to modest means or find another attorney. They would take the client and then not represent them. It was awful. I still am haunted to this day by what happened, and there was nothing I could do about it.
I think I'm sure people are listening to this, and I'm sure some people's jaws are agape, but I'm sure other people aren't. But I think a couple of things that sort of stand out for me from all these stories that you've said so far is that, for the attorney's office or the prosecution or the judge, whether they're doing things illegal or unethical or whatever the case may be, to them, that's that case, right? Like, and really quick, so when you were the busybody having to take all this casework for all these partners to live big lives, I mean, how many cases could you have been juggling at one time?
Oh, maybe 20 in the morning, 20 in the afternoon. I literally sometimes went in there with files, and one woman called me on it. She goes, that's not my son's case. I was mortified. There were so many, and they should have had 5 of me doing this work. And I left after 3 months. I had a judge yell at me in open court, and he was the nicest freaking judge in the county. And then he just said, I'm very sorry. This isn't directed at you. I just absolutely hate the way your firm practices law. And it's not just on the defense side. There was a case going back again. It was another sexual offense case, and the defendant was a police officer, not your most, not the client that's going to get us the most sympathy here.
Sure.
But the point of the matter is, because this could have been any one of us, was the DA charged so many crimes and allegations on here. There were so many charges that when he was convicted of all of them, she told private counsel whom I was working with, wow, I only charged those to bolster the others. So meaning if the others were dismissed or there was a not guilty verdict, he would have been convicted of charges that she knew weren't supported by the evidence. She had a reputation as a win at all cost prosecutor, and they get away with it.
So expound on that a little bit for people at home that might be totally clueless as to how this works. So explain a little bit the concept of prosecution or DA, them trumping up charges, like the idea of trying to put a whole bunch of charges on under, I guess, the premise of maybe they're trying to get you to plead to lesser charges or whatever the case may be. Like, explain that concept of what they do and why they do it, and then maybe a little bit of why that's immoral or unethical.
Again, I think they think there's more credibility in numbers. So they had some accusers who had stronger cases and stronger evidence than others, but there were others that really weren't supported by the evidence, and she just threw those in anyway to make it more credible. Kind of like what we saw when Brett Kavanaugh was being confirmed.
Yeah.
When we get somebody like that, you just throw a bunch of numbers in there, a bunch of accusers. Well, clearly these people wouldn't lie, and look how many of them there are. And that was her quote, though. I just threw those in to bolster that. And he ultimately was convicted. I think he served 12 years.
Yeah. So I guess something that's something that we can revisit on several of these stories is this idea of they're trying to browbeat the defendant into pleading to something when you're thinking to yourself, well, at the very least, it might be worth fighting. At the very most, if you're just flat out an innocent man, if you're an innocent person and you're being put into this corner and you're being put into this place of desperation of making that decision, right? Of should I in effect, plead to something? Should I more or less assume guilt for something that I know I didn't do, or I know it's been misconstrued, or the facts have been misconstrued? How would you say, just a basic yes or no, because I'm going somewhere with this, would you say that happens often?
Yes. Okay.
How, more of a rhetorical question then, how could justice possibly be served if you know for an objective fact that innocent people are pleading guilty to things because they can't win?
One of the problems, before I get to that, is that they will be threatened with more time if they put the people to the trouble of having a jury trial. So we know they hold that above their heads. I think justice could be served by really examining what should be considered a criminal offense and what shouldn't, what should get us in the criminal justice system and what should be handled, as you and I discussed the other day, in a civil matter. We do have civil retribution. We have something also in the criminal justice system called civil compromise. And getting to a system of restitution, where, as you said, even in a murder case, if somebody is going to be participating, maybe on a work release, somehow be productive and begin the process of compensating the family and keep that cage available for somebody else who probably should not be there. I saw this DUIs and domestic violence I dealt with overwhelmingly the most. And as I read the police reports, very, very infrequently did I ever come across somebody that was pulled over for dangerous or erratic driving. It was always failure to signal, or a brake light was out, something like that. It was never, this person has committed a crime. So once they pulled them over, I smelled alcohol or I smelled marijuana, and then they'd get into the criminal justice system. Again, nobody had been hurt by their behavior at that time. And again, 0.08 is not that hard to get. Out here in Utah, it's 0.05. Interestingly enough, they just raised the alcohol content that they can sell in beers. Coincidence? That's, for you to decide.
Well, so one question that I kind of have, another open-ended question is okay, so the statistics of how America is the biggest penal colony in the world, how the crazy amount of people that are incarcerated or are in some part of the criminal justice system within the United States. And then when you hear some of the stories like you're sharing with us today, trumped up charges, people being pushed, browbeat to plead to things, less than ideal representation, judges taking liberties, prosecution taking liberties. How did we get here? How did we get to being the biggest penal colony on earth? How did we get from, how do you go from, I think, what your average person on the streets feeling is, which is, well, there's laws, you don't break them, then you have no problems. If you break one, they feel like it's very static, right? Like there's justice, there's law, there's criminality, there's defendants, there's prosecutors, there's judges. Everything kind of goes in a straight line. There's not a lot of wiggle room. There's supposed to be rules, right? There's supposed to be laws. There's supposed to be rules for how the system works. And the system's not supposed to put innocent people in jail or fine them. We're not supposed to be executing innocent people in Texas. There should be all these different stopgap measures to prevent those things. There's supposed to be rules that the prosecution goes by. There's supposed to be rules that judges go by. So how did we get here?
I think by trying to legislate morality. That's the only conclusion I can come up with. I mean, that gives us the drug war. And then to that, I would say follow the money. How profitable has the drug war been? We've got the feds involved. And again, the feds have absolutely no constitutional authority to regulate substances of any kind. Piracy on the high seas, counterfeiting, and treason. That is it. When I was practicing law, I remember the partner showing me, oh, here we have federal sentencing guidelines. And I was so indoctrinated at the time, I didn't even think, well, wait a minute. What do the feds have any say in what this guy selling pot has to do out here in California? And by the way, why is this guy going into a cage for selling a plant? So when you legislate morality, it becomes very profitable. It's a great way of doing business. Even the felons in California, when I first got out of when I took the bar exam before I passed, I was working with a friend of mine who had his criminal defense practice, and they were representing a guy who had been driving through a community at 85 miles an hour. Well, that was going to be a felony because it was reckless. And we had this thing in California after Randy Davis and Polly Klaas, he murdered this 12-year-old girl, called 3 strikes rule. So after on your third felony, that's it, you go out. Well, recognizing the inherent unfairness and arbitrariness of this policy, there's something called a Romero motion. So you can strike a prior felony in the interest of justice so this person doesn't go away for 25 years. But that comes after the fact. The other thing they did was make it so that the jury would have no idea that this was a 3 strikes case. If they had known that this guy was going to go to jail for 25 years, would they have been so willing to convict him? So they're kind of playing hide the ball from the jury here. So if you can strike a motion in the interest of justice, strike a felony in the interest of justice, maybe that behavior shouldn't have been considered felonious in the first place.
Yeah. So I think that's an excellent point, that when you have as many laws as we have, then that begets a legal system that is so clogged with nonsense, with garbage that isn't worth the time to prosecute or find the criminality of. Then it's like it's layers of the onion, right? So you have all the laws, you have the crackdown on all these things, on victimless crimes, and then that begets having people like younger Suzanne, who has 40 cases today, 20 this morning and 20 this afternoon, and you're having all of 15 minutes to review files, and then you're before a judge with the defendant or whatever. We're going to take a break. I want you to stay with us until after the breaks. I've got a few more questions for you. But before we go, I want you to expand a little bit on. So let's say, and of course this would never happen, but let's say one of our viewers finds themselves sideways with the law, and they did not know of a good attorney beforehand. And I know you had already made the excellent point that when you're already in that stressful, horrible situation, that's not the best time to be making important decisions, but you're there. So what would the random man on the street, what would your advice be to them of what to look for in a good lawyer?
I would say somebody that's willing to take the time to have a meaningful consultation with you, somebody that isn't that doesn't give you the impression that, oh, these cases settle really easily. You have to have a feeling that they want to fight for you and know ahead of time what their contract entails. Ask, what do you charge for the basic fee? What's your flat rate? What about if we have to have extra motions? What about a trial day? You need to do everything you can. When they just try to close the deal, I'd be a little bit suspect. And again, personal reference. Ask for if you know anybody that has used them before, if you know anybody that is friends with them, and try and get to know somebody like that. The last thing you want to do is when you're in a holding cell, thumb through that phone book that's hanging from the payphone on the wall. You're so young. Do you even know what a phone book is?
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. Yeah, so again, and this is something I know that I've had this advice. You already mentioned this, and I think it's a great thing that you mentioned. I once worked with a financial planner who was a good friend of mine, and he had said to me that the reason why his firm was way better than the people you see on TV is because the people on TV are spending millions of dollars to be on TV. They're not spending that time and money representing you.
Well, and that's what this firm did. They had bought the back page and ads in the phone book everywhere you could see them. That was a lot of money. If it was a firm also, I would ask somebody, how many partners do you have? How many associates do you have? Who's doing the bulk of the work here? What's the workload? I tend to lead toward a solo or smaller practitioner firm, and see how accessible they are to you as well. You know, you kind of have to go with what feels right for you. And if somebody seems a little bit slick or promises you too much, just beware. But again, try and do your homework and find somebody that you can trust ahead of time.
All right. Well, Suzanne, hold on with us. We're going to spend a few more moments together, but we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Have you ever been talking politics with a friend and told, if you don't like it here, you should just move to Somalia?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the sandy beaches of Mogadishu, Sherry and I bring you Postcards from Somalia, one of the newer products of Little Elm Productions, where we take on all of the fallacies of the people who say, if you don't like it, you can just get out. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com. You know, I like this whole new thing that we have now, Blake, where you know, we have Suzanne staying with us till after the commercial break. Yeah. But she's muted. Yeah. And Suzanne, you're mute. Oh, that's on the. There you go. That's actually on screen right now.
What's
that's
that?
awesome. Yeah. So, but Suzanne's muted. But the reason she's muted is so that you won't have that talk over the commercial.
Right.
But that also means I can't hear Suzanne either.
Right.
Suzanne's trying to communicate with me the best that she can. So forgive her. That's what she's trying to. Yeah. now you're doing what Michael Bolden did. You know, Michael Bolden was on this program and he spent 45 minutes just sending us emojis. I swear to God, live on air. He's just that's what he was doing the whole. Actually, you know, with Bolden it was just heart emojis almost the whole time. It was just heart emojis because he's such a sweetheart. You know, that's what it is. So, Suzanne, do you have any other horrible stories to tempt our blood pressure? All right, hit me with one more.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we live now?
We've been live this whole time I've been talking.
Are you kidding? Oh, that's
great.
Yeah,
so all those emojis and everything you were sending me has been live on air.
Oh, well, goodness gracious. Okay, I got one. It's actually out of Utah here.
Okay.
And you'll remember the Bundy Ranch incident.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Well, before I moved out here, I actually had become friends from other friends in the area on Facebook with a gentleman by the name of Bill Keebler. And he was a gentleman that lives in Stockton, which is southwest of Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. And he taught a lot of preparedness, homesteading, survival courses, how to process food and store food, that sort of thing. Sure. And he had also held a Patriot event with Sheriff Mack and of, I think, California, Constitutional Sheriff Association, Michelle Fioria, from a representative out of Nevada. I'm no fan of hers. But also Lavoy Finicum, 2 of his daughters were there speaking as well. Bill was not some nutcase extremist. He was a good guy. And he was the head of security, he told me, at Bundy Ranch. And after this had happened, we had spoken on the phone, and he was a changed person. He was terrified. He said, I know they are coming for me. And he was afraid to talk about anything on Facebook. I wanted to interview him for my show, and he wasn't going to do it. And I'm not pointing him as a coward. He got very upset with me because he interpreted when I said, I bet you're afraid to talk about this. And he got very angry. I know he's not a coward, but he was afraid of what the government was going to do to him. Well, sure enough, I find out not too long after that he'd been arrested.
Wow.
And the accusation, he was held in federal custody for, he was accused of attempting to set off a pipe bomb outside of a BLM office in Salt Lake City. And guess who the gentleman in the vehicle was with him? An FBI confidential informant. Now, I had talked to Bill about Bundy Ranch and what happened to him there and what happened. And I said, were there red dots, were there sniper guns, were they pointed in your direction at the family? He said, yes, the entire time. He said, at any one time, did you ever allow or see anybody point a firearm back at the federal agents? He said, absolutely not. Had he not been arrested, he might have been available to testify about this when they had the Bundy trials in Nevada. Conveniently, he tried to apparently blow up a BLM building. So if you believe that, I'd like to sell you a bridge outside of Bundy Ranch. So what happened was they finally gave him a deal. His health had deteriorated to the point where he was in a wheelchair in a significant amount of pain. This is what a friend of his was telling me. And they gave him a deal. Hey, we'll let you go, and you can go and live your life. Or if you do not take this plea, you're going away for a long time, and you will not get the medical treatment that you need. We don't have the ability to give that to you. By the way, you have 10 minutes to decide. He took the deal, and they released him. So let me ask you this, Alan. If somebody's so dangerous that they're going to try and set up a bomb in a city, in an urban area, do you think that individual has any business being out free?
Yeah. Well, as you were telling me the end of that story there about him and his medical condition and his potential medical care, they were sort of leveraging his physicality, his medical care against the decision he was going to make that was going to affect his life legally. Isn't there something in the Constitution about cruel and unusual punishment? Does that not verge on that? When they're basically saying that, well, look, man, you're going to have to play ball with us, otherwise we can't guarantee that you're not going to suffer physically.
Well, Alan, they were just threatening him with cruel and unusual punishment.
Oh, okay. It was only a threat. Okay. Exactly so. Well, Suzanne, I've got one more, possibly the most important question for you.
Oh, I hate these.
and then we're going to wrap up today. So Suzanne, well, actually, you know what? Let's do our housekeeping first. So Suzanne, where can people enjoy the Wasatch Report?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Cerberus Radio Network, and they can also find the Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. They're our latest in the lineup, so thank you very much. And we have some great shows, very talented lineup. I'm delighted that you've joined us. I also have a website, SuzanneCSherman.com. All of our shows are there on SoundCloud. Please, I'd love to have people follow us on SoundCloud. You will get updates when they're available, and my published blogs from the 10th Amendment Center, American Conservative, and the Abbeville Institute are also there, as are my blogs. I also have a latest blog out on red flag laws and how they're really nothing more than thought control, so I encourage you to do that. And by the way, there's a donate button if you feel so inclined. We would very much appreciate it. So thank you so much for having me, Alan.
This right here is going to determine your donations. Are you ready?
No.
If you put a lasagna on top of another lasagna, is that 2 lasagnas, or is it just now a lasagna?
I'm saying 1 lasagna.
Blake, what do you think?
I think it's a lasagna.
I'm inclined to think that that's just now, because it's kind of like you would say, oh, there's sheep. That's just, oh, look,
it's
that's
lasagna.
That's lasagna.
It's a big lasagna.
Yeah.
It's just
well, what if you put a scoop of ice cream on top of another scoop of ice cream? Is that still an ice cream, or is it two ice creams? Or does it depend on
well,
the
I
cone?
think in that case it would be
or the
like,
bowl, and then it's soup. I give up.
These are the type of important questions that we're trying to get answered on this program. I hope people at home can appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much.
Putting people in cages. This is the important stuff.
It is. Guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Gold Standard. We're a proud product of Little L Productions, alongside other fine programming as The Sherry Voluntary Show, Godarchy with Mike Meharry, Sports Ball with Mike and Alan, which is coming back on Thursday, and Postcards from Somalia. You can find us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @Alan and Mosley. You don't have to do anything. Just go to our website, which is goldstandardpodcast.com. Suzanne, what's your URL again?
SuzanneCSherman.com.
And SuzanneCSherman.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.